what should people know about when working with tribes, right? I mean, there's a lot of vendors out there. There's a lot of service providers. There's a lot of people. Whenever there's a lot of money, there's a lot of interest, right? So, what should be people, what should they know about working with tribes?
Well, let me jump in right there and say this time crunch is going to have a big thing to do with it. The supply chain is going to have a big thing to do with it. So you're going to have vendors with a little bit of validity behind them saying, hey, look, at inventory is going quick. You got to act now. You got to strike while the iron is hot. And, so you have to come see me.
It's like a car salesman. Come on, right now, come in.
This is always the case with tribes. We are under constant pressure. And I think for ourselves, we need to know that our vendors, while they may have some similar goals to ourselves and even our partners, they are from a different perspective and have different overall objectives, even though they're there to help us. But the second part, the big part of your question, I think, was what do I wish vendors knew more about tribes?
Yeah.
I would flip that around and say that I in my fantasy land, I wish vendors knew more about themselves, or to say this better, understood what they didn't know about tribes. To ask one single person to understand all 575 plus individual unique cultures that are all over the country, I mean, that's an impossible task. So I think it's more realistic to say, hey, there's no way I'm going to be able to understand Indian country or Native American tribes in any comprehensive way. I think they need to approach each individual nation as the unique cultures that they are, and then appreciate them for those unique perspectives. I mean, in my own valley right here, you can have languages change every 15 miles. And they sound similar, but they're different, and perspectives and even governments can be wildly and entirely in different structures. So what works on the East Coast or the Midwest with the tribe and their government may not even be legally possible on the West Coast with the way our governments are set up. So I guess that's what I would say is, if I could talk to my vendors, is be like, you're dealing with a brand new scenario and a brand new case with every tribe.
That's very insightful. It makes me think that, a lot of companies and, culture and values of a company are often thrown around very loosely.
Oh man, there's all kinds of like corporate trainings where you can go find your tribe. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can pay money to go learn cultural values that are mined from indigenous nations and then monetized in the corporate world.
Yeah. I think to your point though, it's, I guess I'm curious, do you look for, and I use the term, there's vendors and there's partners. Partners mean that there's reciprocal, you both are in it to win it, so to speak, versus a vendor is somebody who is simply doing you a service and not, they're a vendor, right? I'm curious.
Well, that's a tough one, but I would say we've had good success with our partners. And like I said, that's a very distinct, I like that you define that between vendors and partners, but we try to find partners that have similar core values.
Agreed.
But more importantly, partners who are willing to risk as much as we are. They need to understand that we are in the community, like your local, the tribal nations, the people that these vendors are working with. They're risking everything in their tribes. I mean, they're trying to maneuver through political avenues and fiscal and monetary and grant and all these different things. And they are out there in the community risking it all to bring internet to their people. And so if tribes can find a partner or partners willing to come into their community who will say, you know what, we're going to put our name on there right with you guys. So if you fail, we fail, and we're not going to let you do that. I think I don't want to say that's the answer to all of them, but that's one approach that we try to take at ISI and Numu Networks, is really trying to find out what the core values are of the community that we're in, and then find the partners that align with that and are willing to go the distance with us.
I think a lot of people forget that broadband, at the end of the day, I mean, broadband's technology, but broadband's about people. Like, and the whole point of what broadband does is, and we talk about digital equity and connectivity, like, I mean, we sit here on a Zoom call, right? Like, I mean, honestly, we're privileged. I mean, we're privileged to be able to have this conversation, to be able to have a video conference. I mean, yeah, and again, I was thinking of that. You're talking about the frozen ground. Like, so when I lived in Hawaii, like we had to try to blast through lava rock, like to try to get fiber
Yeah.
and lay things. Like, I mean, I get
Yeah.
like those are, you know, I think a lot of times we forget. And Jesse, I get you. I mean, I take your point to heart that like it is a community, and that's what I think people forget sometimes. The vendors sometimes forget, right? Is there
Yeah,
other things, I guess, you guys would say like, hey, if I could educate the people that are working and trying to support this initiative that, you know, you guys are all putting your heart and soul into, what else would you tell them?
I can share one that a tribal member told me, because I was asking for advice. I was like, I can't get through to these people in cultural. Like, what do I got to do? You know, they don't want to talk to me. They don't want to work with me. And like, what do I got to do to like bridge the gap? And they said, well, maybe you should try talking less and listening more. And I think just in general, that was a tribal member telling me that, you know, and that was her advice on how to reach out. But I think that's something that companies come in and they go, let us tell you how we'll solve your problem. And it's like, maybe you should come in and find out a little bit about what's going on and like, what does the tribe want? Like, does the tribe want to try to run their network? Do they want to be an ISP? Do they not want to be an ISP? Are they just looking for somebody? Like, you should, you know, go ask the questions and let them tell you how they want it to look, instead of you telling them like, here's how we'll solve it for you. And I think that goes to like the sovereignty issue that kind of comes out of all of this in the end.
Dion, do you want to get in on this? Because I really want to build on that. Justin, I think you hit it on the spot, but I feel like to speak to the vendors, if we're speaking to the vendor audience now, if you as a vendor want to have success, then I would recommend doing just what Justin said, finding out what is important to that community, and then letting them offer up, tell them what you can do, but then let them come up with their own creative solutions, because then that's going to build in ownership and buy-in. And, you know, honestly, they're probably going to come up with, whoever's in that local community is going to come up with a way more creative solution or application to that technology than a standard provider would.
I can't tell you how much equipment I see just hanging on the poles out there of something that, oh, this should work. And then because it doesn't match the community, it's not used. And it comes down to that bottom line, the values. And oftentimes what I see with vendors is they're not using the right bottom line. The bottom line isn't always a dollar sign. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's who's it connecting. You don't want to connect the most households. You want to connect those that have nothing. You know, someone might have some cell phone, service, and they have to hang halfway outside their window, but at least they have something. You want to go the next one over and make that neighborhood be connected, even though it's just 12 homes and not 100 that you can get with the radio somewhere else. And it's they want to know you. Professor Begay at Northern Arizona University once told me something. When I'm meeting with new communities, listen for sure, watch. People are telling you their story. And if you're talking, you're not hearing. Tell them who you are as an individual. Tell them what you are offering, and tell them how much it is, because nothing's free. Even if I think it's free, it's not. There's something that is exchanged. And I would say this is running a nonprofit. We work with a lot of big tech companies that are like, oh, we're giving this away. I'm like, no, you're not. You're greenfielding. You're testing the equipment. And how much would you pay a lab to do this in Iowa? That's their core business. That should be paid to the tribe, or at least the equivalent of that. And we also need to worry a little bit about what Jesse was saying earlier about what we don't know about ourselves. Our outside values are embedded in the software and in the network architecture. And I can go all geeky on you guys, but Justin's face is like begging me not to.
No, actually, let's go down. I'm curious.
You want the rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Look at billing. Look at the embedded ideas of how you support your network. An individual subscription fee with tiered systems. that would go against a lot of community values that I've worked with. The idea that somebody should get more than others because they can pay more money, or the idea that this isn't a utility that should be supplied for free. If you look at how, what I posit here is that if you look at how communications in general move through a community, your network should mimic that. So, for example, whether it's mesh or if it's like 1 point, broadcasting everywhere,
Yeah.
or one of my favorites is I was doing site surveys up in Alaska, and the main points of communications were the flyers up in the native store, the tribal office, and the laundromat. Great. Now I know where to put Wi-Fi hotspots. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So look at actually how the community interacts, listen, run things by the knowledge keepers, the elders, the tribal leadership, those who know, those who can translate. Because no community is the same. Maybe you know one community really well, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to talk to leadership or elders in another community.
It's actually
So-
fascinating. I mean, design, I mean, it makes so much logical sense, but it's, saying it like design, engineer it for the way the community actually communicates.
This actually
Bam.
reminds me of, because I
It's the beer.
didn't
Yeah,
really
it's
have
totally
much
the beer.
time I didn't have much time to prep, but I did get to listen to a few of your guys' podcasts beforehand, and this really reminded me around two of them that were particularly interesting to me around open access,
Mhm.
and the other one was monetizing the pipe. But around open access, there was you had some really interesting guests on there, and I really think they hit the nail on the head, because and I don't want to chop up what you guys said, but basically like an open access model can really, like, how do we do this? How do we make money? Maybe you have to be truly altruistic to have an open access model, or you have to run it like the Europeans or things like that. This is where I think tribes are uniquely in an advantageous position to do things just like this, by the nature, or by really the forced requirement of us having these constitutions or Americanized governments. One of the results of those things is that we had to have economic development corporations, and not to get too down in the weeds, but we have our goals are not the same. How do I say this? Our I don't want to call them stockholders. That is not the wrong thing, but our stakeholders are not the same as a stockholder, right? Our community is not interested. I don't want to say ours, but many communities may not be interested in turning a profit. They may be more interested in providing free high-speed access to their entire community. And whether or not they turn a profit is not their priority. It's the fact that now their kids can participate in distance education. They can make medical appointments online, or participate in their governments, which they might not have been able to do. So money and profits is many times super far down on the road, and then trying to communicate just that perspective with the vendor who is coming from a culture of, well, I gotta look at my profit margins here.
Right.
I mean, no matter what, I could say, do you understand what I'm saying? And yeah, I understand the words that you're using, but they might not still understand. We're not really trying to make a dollar here. We're trying to connect this family over here who their kids need to go to school. So yeah,
The purpose is different, right?
very much.
Yeah. Well, how do you, well, I guess before I move on, any other feedback for vendors that, which is, I think, clearly some very insightful commentary that I hope people listen to. Dion, anything from you?
Yeah, I just think on the other side of the coin, from what I've witnessed since this all came out was, we had one organization, I'll leave names out of it, but they're a larger organization in the whole nation, basically come in and say, hey, you guys are gonna, you got a chance to get all this money. And before, up to that point, they didn't want really to come up, because we tried to partner with them to get them to bring services onto the tribe here, because we feel like this other organization that's serving us now is about to go under. So we're looking out. We've been working at this for 18 months. And we've been reaching out to vendors, and there wasn't really a lot of interest. But as soon as you know, the NTIA grant hit, wow, I was getting calls, you know, like, hey, why don't we? So, okay, how does this partnership look? How does this work? Is there going to be, you know, we're going to go in with this grant on you. Is there going to be subsidies on our side? Is there going to be, you know, how do we work out this partnership? So it's, you know, it's truly a mutual thing. And no, you're going to have access to the greatest network in the United States, and you know it's going to be fast, and that's how it's going to work for you guys. We're going to give you the service, and you're legit. And that just wasn't, you know, it sounded good. I mean, these people get fast internet, yeah, but at the same time, we just had a large network that's, you know, across America was serving us right now, and they're not doing so well. And you know, whenever that hits that point, you know, we don't do so well either. So, you know, being the keeper of our own key, being the, you know, that it was one of our goals going into it. And like I said, as far as the vendors go, they're following the money as pretty much everybody else said. But I think it's important, you know, for tribes to really understand like their strategic goals and actually figure out this is what they want. Because there's going to be people, car salesmen, like you're talking about, saying, "Oh yeah, we can provide that. We can provide you whatever you want. Just, you know, come to us." I mean, I had a person trying to sell me um, some software to run a network, and I don't even got a network yet. You know, how's this all go together? You know, it's like, well, once you get it, you know, it's a turnkey solution, and no, we're not there yet. And so, I mean, I guess, you know, for us and you know, for this tribe here, having that, you know, what we want already in place prior to the vendor getting there has really helped us out.
I don't want to walk on your stuff, but that just brings me back to that monetizing the pipe, which is, there was something also in that episode that really struck with me. And that is what we could be looking at as ISPs or tribes if we were to lay all that down, lay down our infrastructure, and then, you know, see what happens after that. And so what I really thought was interesting is that, you know, in the future, we're going to have so many different service providers. Our customers are going to have millions of options to choose. And I think it's more important, and whoever said that on that episode, I think it's more important that we own our own infrastructure, and because that really sets the tone for our future. And if we have it, then we can control it. So thank you, Dion.
So how
Pretty
do
passive
we,
income.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just pretty passive income. I was you know, a nationwide provider that we would all recognize the name, that should go unnamed, would be like, oh, give us you know, free space on your towers, and you know what, we'll maintain it for you. These aren't cats, these aren't cows. It's like, how much maintenance does it take on a tower? It's not going to walk away. So there's a certain level of respect that I think folks, as they walk into different tribal communities, there's been some good checks I've seen, but in this scramble, there's also been a lot of bad agreements signed.